Ladies and gentlemen, today we are diving into something new. The Exclusive Ace has a video, Are Footsteps Too Loud in Black Ops 6? But I want to look at this in a bit of a different light. Are footsteps broken in Black Ops 6? Because they can be broken in two ways. Number one, you can't hear them at all. And number two, you can hear literally everything, which causes people to camp and ruins the game. So we're going to watch this video, see what he has to say. We might have to turn the volume up on this one just to be able to hear what he is testing. But it's kind of a long one, 15 minutes. So let's hear what he has to say. He always makes great analytical content like
What's
this.
up, guys? My name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep look at the footstep audio in Black Ops 6 to see if, by default, it's perhaps too loud. Then, of course, we're going to be taking a look at the Ninja perk to see exactly what that does. Does it actually silence your footsteps, or does it...
I'm hoping he compares it to other games like audio levels, like the decibels, but I don't know if he will.
Quieter. And we're also going to see how this all interacts with the acoustic amp field upgrade, which boosts footstep audio.
See if it's even worth it.
And without further ado, let's just dive right into this. Keep in mind, with these types of videos, I always recommend using a headset or some sort of earbuds, or at the very least, just turn your volume up a little bit in order to get the full experience out of this video, since you will need to be listening.
You're watching this not on a headset, I will be your headset. I'll let you know how it sounds.
Listening carefully. And let's just start this off with the default footstep audio. Keeping in mind, I'm just using the Treyarch Mix settings, and I'm not testing the enhanced audio today, simply because at the moment, they've disabled it. It will come back in the future, I'm sure, including the paid portion of it where you can scan your head and have a personalized profile.
Which is hilarious.
I do plan on making a video on that eventually once it comes back, but as of right now, we're just looking at the default game audio. And in these first clips, there is no Ninja present, and I am not using the acoustic amp as well. This is just the default footstep audio. And we're going to start this off with Tactical Sprint. Pay close attention to how far away you can start to hear that first footstep, as well as how loud it gets as that player gets closer.
Oh, wait. I'm in the way. There we go. So loud. Honestly, super loud.
So there we go. For me, while using the headset without the YouTube audio compression as well, that is something that may come into play here on your end, unfortunately, and there's nothing I can do about that. I was able to hear that first footstep very faintly at about 33 meters or so. And range-wise, at least, this is roughly in line with what we've seen in the previous years of Call of Duty.
There you go. And
then volume-wise, as that player gets close, it's pretty loud and clear. You can definitely hear somebody tac sprinting if they're...
I think that's probably the biggest improvement with Black Ops 6's audio is as someone gets closer, the loudness of the footsteps and difference between it.
Within a very close
I'm
radius
hoping he also
to
looks
you.
at
Honestly, even if there were
between
gunfire in the
walls and
vicinity,
stuff.
you're probably still going to hear those footsteps. Next, let's have a listen to standard sprinting. Again, pay attention to the range as well as the volume.
29. It didn't look like... It's definitely quieter up close.
So once again, with this, I would say I heard that first footstep around 30 meters, maybe like 31, 32 meters. It definitely wasn't quite as loud as Tactical Sprint, especially at those longer ranges. It would be much harder to actually pick up on those footsteps at range, especially when there's gunfire and explosions and stuff on the map. However, as I start closing the distance and they get within about 10 meters or so, it's definitely loud enough at that point that if you're really paying attention, it would be hard to miss. After that, what if the enemy is just walking at full speed, so not sprinting, but also not aiming down sight or anything? What does that sound like?
So the one thing that I will say is one of the tips that I gave everyone is to put tactical sprint assist or whatever it's called on, so that every time you move, you don't have to press the sprint button. It just automatically tac sprints. This is going to make your footsteps louder. And maybe I should have said that when I put that in a video, but it does.
Let's have a listen.
Ooh. Oh, there. So I would say 22 was the first I heard it. Maybe 25 or 22.
With this one, I was quite surprised to hear that first footstep still at about 27 meters or so. That's quite a long range, a lot longer than I expected with just standard walking speed. However, in a realistic scenario, I highly doubt I would actually hear that footstep until the enemy gets really close. And then even at that point, it would have to be a fairly quiet situation where there isn't a bunch of gunfire going off around me. Otherwise, I don't think I would really hear that unless they were like right on top of me. After that, let's have a listen to aim walking speed to see if this silences your footsteps by default.
Nope. Still quite loud, actually.
When it comes to that one, if I crank my audio, yeah, I can hear that footstep at about 5 to 10 meters or so.
No, I would say it was further than that.
And then as it gets to point blank range, I can hear it a little bit more obviously. But again, this is one of those things where in a realistic scenario, if there's any sort of other audio going on around the map, like gunfire or explosions, you're...
Well, the thing that you have to remember there is he's looking at this from like a domination standpoint. We got to look at this from search and destroy, because honestly, like footsteps are important in other modes, but in search and destroy, they're far more important. And that is like, you would be able to hear that in search.
Just straight up not going to hear this, or you're not going to hear it at least in time to prepare.
I want to know if he looks at occlusion, like between walls and stuff, if that
so
audio
I would say this
changes.
is quite an effective technique for sneaking up on enemy players, but it's not 100% silent. Then let's have a listen to crouch walking, since this is often another technique that is meant to be used for sneaking up on enemy players.
It should be silent. No, it's about the same as aiming.
With that one, I would say it was very similar to the aim down sight walking example. You can hear those footsteps if you really crank it up and there's no background audio, but unless you're using something like Sound EQ, I think you would be very hard pressed to actually gain any gameplay advantage by hearing somebody crouch walking. Since by the time you hear them, they're probably already touching you and therefore you're already dead.
True.
Now, one last thing I wanted to have a listen to here is sliding, since this is quite an important movement in this game and it does have its own unique audio. So let's have a listen to that.
Slide and be loud.
And when it comes to that, while the slide itself isn't quite as loud as somebody that's like tactical sprinting or anything, it is pretty easy to hear somebody sliding if they're in the general vicinity of you.
Your slide's going to give yourself away,
even in a realistic gameplay scenario. And there we go. That wraps it up for all of the base tests. That's with no Ninja or Acoustic Amp present. Now let's have a look at the Ninja perk in this game. Is it completely silent? Well, let's have a listen to Tactical Sprint first.
It like halves it, and it is very quiet. That's
it turns out,
sprinting.
No, Ninja does not completely silence your footsteps.
Man,
however, I would say that volume is comparable to like the aim walking speed volume,
that's what I was going to say,
or the crouch walking
even
speed volume that we had without any perks present. So it is very quiet. The average player that's not using sound.
Honestly, I think that's like pretty good balance. Like when you think about it, like to get rid of footsteps audio altogether, that's broken. That's a crutch perk. But to have just a little bit,
EQ is probably never going to hear you. However, if they do have that headset cranked, it's a quiet situation, and or they are using Sound EQ, then it's possible they will hear you coming. Now, I know it can get really tedious talking about each one of these clips individually, so I'm just going to play the rest of the clips back to back so you guys can hear for yourself.
Perfect.
So it's going to start with sprinting, then walking, then aim down sight walking, and then crouching, and we'll cover sliding separately.
So this is regular sprinting?
Have a listen.
Oh, it might as well be silent. I think that's quieter than aim down sights. No noise there. Like... That's none at all. Completely silent. And that's going to be the same. So next to silent.
When it comes to all of that, once again, you could hear the footsteps if the player was sprinting very, very faintly.
Yeah, barely.
Again, it's likely going to take somebody using Sound EQ to actually be able to hear you. However, I noticed with aim down sight walking and crouch walking, I couldn't hear any footsteps at all. Maybe a little bit of rustling of the player's clothing, but even that was hard to hear over the bugs in the background on the map.
Agreed.
So you're effectively dead silent if you're using Ninja and crouch walking or aim down sight walking. Now, finally for Ninja, you might be curious what it sounds like if you're using Ninja and sliding near enemies, so let's have a listen there.
Oh my god, it's silent.
As you can probably tell,
completely
it is
silent.
audible. You can hear somebody sliding when they're using Ninja. It's very quiet still, and something that would be very easy to miss in a realistic gameplay scenario, but it's also something that you could potentially pick up on without
I'm surprised he didn't say this, but that was actually one of the bigger differences I noticed. That's a huge difference. I thought it was going to be normal.
Having to use Sound EQ. And there we go, that wraps it up for Ninja. Next, let's look at the Acoustic Amp Field Upgrade, which I really like what they did this time around. Like, if they're gonna have a perk or something that boosts footstep audio, I love the fact that they tied this to a limited use field upgrade.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that.
You have to charge up, and you have to activate at the appropriate time. But when you do this, it very noticeably boosts footstep audio. And at first, I want to play clips against a player that isn't using the Ninja perk.
That's what I want to see.
And then after, we'll look at how it interacts with Ninja. And once again, I'm just going to play all the clips back to back for you guys, starting off with Tac Sprint and finishing with sliding. Have a listen for yourself.
Yeah, that's loud. That's definitely loud. So, honestly... Hear the echo? The echo is so much louder. Maybe you don't. Maybe if you don't have a headset on. But yeah, walking is probably the biggest difference. The length, like distance. Same with this. Yeah, so easier to hear everything. And you're gonna hear the crouch walking and ADS walking. Now Ninja's where I want to hear this. That's really loud.
So as I'm sure you heard, Acoustikamp makes footsteps extremely loud.
Yeah.
Like when tactical sprinting or sprinting, you'll easily be able to hear that over gunfire and explosions in the immediate vicinity of you. Even while you're firing your own gun, you're going to hear those footsteps just fine. And honestly, even when the enemy is walking or aim down sight walking, you'll generally be able to pinpoint them just fine. And especially when they're sliding, that is like extremely loud as well. So this field upgrade definitely does what's advertised. Now let's finally see how this interacts with Ninja. Does the Acoustikamp cancel out Ninja and therefore just give like standard bass audio as if there were no perk or field upgrade present? Or does it not counter it at all, or something else? Let's have a listen.
It's still really loud. It seems like the distance is less though. It's still very loud. That's walking. It took to be closer, but... So it definitely does make a difference. That's still pretty quiet though, I'm not gonna lie. But remember, when they were doing that without Acoustikamp, it was completely silent. Oh! So, okay. For Ace answers, I'm willing to bet that this is the exact same as if no perks were on. If Ninja wasn't on, and if Acoustikamp wasn't on, it's the exact same. And honestly, that's the way it should be. They essentially cancel each other out.
Now, these results surprise me quite a bit. The Acoustikamp completely overpowers Ninja. Yeah. It doesn't just cancel it out, it overpowers it and boosts the footstep audio of Ninja users beyond the level of what you would normally hear if neither of these were present. And just so you can hear that for yourself, I'm going to play back to back. The first clip here is going to be Tac Sprint when there's no perks or Acoustikamp present, and then immediately after, I'm going to transition into the situation where I'm using Acoustikamp and the enemy is using Ninja. And pay close attention to the difference in audio.
Okay. Yeah, it's louder. 100% louder.
As I'm sure you heard, it's very noticeably louder in that second clip, which shows that Acoustikamp overpowers the Ninja perk. Now, if this were a perk instead of a field upgrade, this would be a huge problem in my eyes. Since it's a field upgrade, I kind of get what they're going for here.
Yeah, right? I do Since it's a limited time use, it's going to be better than something that's a permanent use.
So that does make sense. Overboard versus a Ninja perk.
But I honestly do think
I feel like just canceling it out would be more appropriate.
I agree.
But as a field upgrade, I don't think this is necessarily completely outrageous, especially since obviously Acoustikamp will be banned in any sort of competitive play. But those are just my thoughts on that. And of course, I want to hear what you guys think about that down below as well. But we're not quite done yet. I do also want to do a quick test through surfaces, since that is an important aspect of hearing footsteps is, can you hear them coming before they're in your line of sight? So therefore, they're on the other side of a wall. And I'm just going to play some clips back to back. I'll label what they are. I don't want this video to be way too long here, but in this situation, I put a very thick wall between me and the enemy player, and I'm just going to share standard sprinting tests here and how loud you can hear those footsteps through that thick wall all the way up until they come around the corner. Keep in mind, the audio you're hearing is only from the stationary player. I've muted the other player's perspective. I just wanted to show it there so you can see where they are throughout the clip. Let's have a listen.
Yep, I like this. Yeah, so you can definitely hear it. See, it's the reverb effect. As they get closer, can't even hear it right now. Ooh. That was almost nothing. That Acoustikamp is insane. Oh, I realize you guys can't really see where they are right now. If I do this, there we go.
Alright, so in that scenario, the default situation with no perk and no field upgrade, I couldn't really hear the footstep through the thick portion of the wall for most of the clip. However, I would say I got a few seconds warning before that player got around the corner, so you could hear the footsteps before actually seeing the player. Then with Ninja, of course, couldn't hear him at all until he was basically touching me. Yeah. With Acoustikamp, it was loud and clear all the way through, even that super thick wall when they were out on the street,
actually
you could hear him just fine.
Well, I just
and even with Ninja, when using
up.
Acoustikamp, I could still hear that player very clearly way before I ever saw them come around that corner, and I could track their position very accurately in real time. And there we go. That's going to wrap it up for all of the tests that I did here when it comes to footstep audio. Now it's time to share my opinions on this. And the first big question is, Are footsteps too loud by default? Ignoring Ninja, ignoring Acoustic Amp.
Curious what he says
too
here.
loud in the sense that it feels punishing to move around the map aggressively and just constantly getting pre-fired? After putting in a decent amount of playtime, I would say yes to a small degree. I think they are just a little bit too loud and a little too easy to pinpoint. That's another thing I want to mention is the directional audio in this game is...
It's good. Like, that's the thing, is it's actually good, which may be too good for like actual play.
Excellent in my experience. I can pinpoint exact locations very, very effectively. Honestly, I would say more so than any other Call of Duty game I've ever played. It's really that good when it comes to positional audio. But it is worth noting, my answer does depend on the types of lobbies you're playing in. And that's the thing, with the way the matchmaking system works, different people are effectively playing different versions of the game. If you're in higher skilled lobbies, you are going to get sound horde like crazy. If you're not using Ninja and you're playing aggressively, you're going to get pre-fired like crazy. Before you come around the corner, that enemy is going to be ready for you. They know you're coming.
I've actually
and I get lots of kills like this, where I just hear a footstep, turn around, shoot in the direction.
I did notice that a lot. And that's the thing, right? It's so they're nerfing recon. It might even happen today. Where you can see people through walls. But the other part of that perk is the HUD indicator when someone looks at you. If you can hear footsteps well enough, that perk is essentially useless unless enemies are not moving.
Direction of that footstep, and I get the kill that I otherwise wouldn't have had. Whereas in the lower skilled lobbies, you could probably tack sprint all over the place like crazy and never have to worry about getting pre-fired due to your footstep audio. So I think that is where opinions may vary here, but in my opinion, the footsteps are maybe just a little too easy to pinpoint by default. And unfortunately, this means that I'm going to be using Ninja on a whole lot of my class setups, depending on the map, of course, as well. If you're on the really small cramp...
Like, is Ninja better than Ghost for a perk 1? That's the question.
Maps, it's usually chaotic enough that you don't have to worry as much. But when you get onto
the reason why I say that is Ninja works in every use case. Like, if you are moving, it works. Whereas Ghost only works if someone has a UAV, right?
Medium or larger maps where there's a bit more room to breathe and also a bit more room to hear footsteps due to the fact that there's less chaos.
He's right.
Well, in that case, Ninja may be a little bit of a crutch once again.
Yeah,
additionally,
on the
when it comes
maps,
to that
like
acoustic
Nuketown,
amp,
it doesn't really matter as much.
Insanely powerful. And like I said earlier, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it not only cancels out Ninja, it totally overpowers it. Of course, these are just my opinions, though, and it's totally fine if you guys disagree. I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about the current state of footstep balance, including Ninja and Acoustic Amp? Are you guys generally happy with where it's at, or do you think it's too loud or maybe too quiet? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.
As per usual, Ace with the absolute stellar video. Great way of looking at things, and I'm glad he showed the occlusion. I kind of blocked it out on the screen there, but essentially what you need to know is there's a big thick wall in between you. The only way to like actually hear someone completely on the other side is Acoustic Amp. Now, one thing that he didn't talk about is with Acoustic Amp, it makes footsteps so loud. I'm curious what it sounds like with multiple enemies. Right? Like with one person, it's very easy to say, oh, okay, turn Acoustic Amp on. That person's on the other side of this wall and we can hear them running this way. But if there's two people,